Hello, Internet. This is again Kopitiam Council with new episode, new week. And just as usual, today you have Haffiz and you are with.
He is with Adi as usual.
And yes, as usual. Now, Adi, we are in the last week of February. A lot of things happen. And what do we want to start off with?
Okay, I think usually since we always cover local and international issues, I think we can start with local, considering that a lot of people are now very concerned about the well-being of Malaysia, considering that the ringgit has recently depreciated to a level that has a lot of people saying has depreciated to levels not seen since the 1998 financial crisis. Now, this was quite shocking because Malaysia's never seen its currency devalued to this point. But at the same time, there has been a lot of uproar considering the response made by the Prime Minister, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim, who, in a very candid interview, was asked, why is the ringgit falling or why is we in this kind of economic situation? To which he replied, you asked the governor of Bank Negara Malaysia. So a lot of people saw that as you're shirking responsibilities. And in a way, it can be seen that way because he is the finance minister as well, alongside holding the position of prime minister. So there's a lot here to unpack. Like, what is the cause for this kind of shift in our currency? What is the government's response? What's happening here behind the scenes? Is the prime minister actually making an attempt to rectify or mitigate this kind of situation? So let's start from there, Hafiz.
Yeah, I mean, there are several factors, as we all know. I think a lot of people, not just economists or politicians, but also a lot of academics also mentioning that this is a multifactorial problem here. And this is not just overnight problem because the underlying for the poor performance of ringgit is due to our long term decline in competitiveness as an economy. I think we need to remember that Malaysia is a trading nation. So above all, Malaysia, China is one of biggest trading partners. So that's why partly also the problem is because of China is not doing well in terms of their economy. So the ripple effect gonna be on us as well. So as one of the largest trading partners, we hurt on that side, but also domestically, Adi, there's also a lot of policy issues regarding. This is where you would say, hey, this is the government responsibility to, as a government of the day, you prime minister as well as finance minister. This is need to be addressed as policy. Yes, I agree with all of the netizens saying that, hey, prime minister shouldn't be responding that way. Like, go ask the Bank Negara governor. Like, that shouldn't be his first reaction. But I think he owned it. I think just few days after that, I think he tried to mention that because Bank Negara governor Bank Negara is going to make a press conference. So I think he meant that, hey, go listen to Bank Negara because there's press conference coming. So I think his context. But of course, like in the heat of the moment, I think he was going to somewhere. I think one event, and he got caught by the journalist. So I think now he come up better. Now we've been talking into several events now that he says that don't compare ringgit going down now like in the 1998 simply because the condition is not the same. He said inflation less than 2%, uh, unemployment is very low, and our foreign direct investment is the highest in ages. So with these fundamentals right, I think I agree with Anwar that ringgit shouldn't be seen as a yardstick to measure our economy right now. So even though ringgit is a little bit poor in terms of performance among many other yardstick of economy, but it shouldn't be seen as the only one. So I think that's the key takeaway, and we shouldn't be worried because the underlying the fundamentals are in order. And I think the only thing that's gonna solve this for long term is what we're gonna do fundamentally. So FDI going up, that's good. Uh, Unemployment low, very good, and also inflation very low. It's gonna be very easy for the government to just increase the OPR rate, but who's gonna paying for the price? It's gonna be the average Joe out there, and that's not gonna be easy. So those who like mourning like, hey, ringgit is down, whatever. For most of us, most of Malaysian, we are not really having the impact firsthand. Yes, of course, there's a lot of things that being trade coming in, especially food. Food gonna be bought into Malaysia and paid in US dollars. But as a it's a grand scheme of things, it will not affect us much compared to if OPR rate simply just being hiked up so that we can make ringgit looks good, and that's not going to be good for Makcik Kia and whoever having loans and loans with the bank. So I think this is a trade-off that we need to see, and definitely not a popular opinion for the government to do. But I agree that we or the government decided to go this way instead of the other. What do you think, Adi?
Okay, I think I'm just going to be a bit more critical on this, considering that one of Anwar's election promises back then, when he was campaigning to become prime minister, he made this bold statement saying that under Anwar Ibrahim, the ringgit will not fall, the ringgit will increase in value instead. So those are very bold things to say, considering that you can easily make the ringgit value move up and down on a whim, because like you mentioned, there are a lot of international or foreign external factors that does govern the value of the ringgit. So in a way, it's you play that rhetorical, how do you say, that rhetorical talking points to most of the people, and then when you see that the ringgit has depreciated to such a value, most people who was bought into to support Anwar just based on that kind of rhetoric would definitely feel quite cheated in a way. Like, hey, you said if we vote for you, the ringgit won't fall. But I think this is something that not many leaders would be prepared to see. Like, this is not just an issue exclusive to Malaysia. I think many other currencies as well has uh, experienced all kinds of economic downturns as well. But this is something that you should, as a statesman and as a leader, should actually predict somehow. Those unknown unknowns, those factors that you would not actually consider, would actually should still be considered as an unpredictability. There's always those X factors when you're leading a nation. So this is something that should have been considered as well, and not something that you would throw so blasé out during the campaign or during the election cycles. So that is one thing I would just want to point out. But like I said, like you said, is that there's also some positives to be taken here. Like you said, the fundamentals are still there. I think one of the Bank Negara Governor did mention that despite the ringgit's performance, domestic consumption and domestic expenditure, which is the biggest contributor to the GDP, is still at quite a healthy rate. People are still spending money at a rate that is, how do you say, conducive to economic growth. So, like you said, the fundamentals are there. And I think at the same time, this when we look at the currency depreciating, that also opens up many opportunities and many avenues for economic activity. Like now that the ringgit is much lower in value compared to other currencies such as Singapore, the ringgit is now cheaper for Singaporeans to buy, to exchange. So that could be used to prop up the tourism sector. Now that it's cheaper for, let's say, example, Singaporeans to come to Malaysia to spend their money, and that also generates all kinds of economic opportunities. But this means that the tourism sector needs to also get a grip onto what kind of marketing or branding, or how do we attract even more tourists to take advantage of this depreciated, devalued currency. Now, this does come at a very awkward situation, because I think it was just recently the Director General for Malaysia Tourism has just been recently demoted.
Mot-
Uh, so it's a kind of sense of a very weird message. If tourism is something that you want to take advantage of during this time, that is not the best message to send out at the moment. But that I think we can leave it just to put aside, because I just want to go to another point as well. Is that um, considering that Anwar went through the whole financial crisis with Mahathir, and being labeled as the world's Asia's best finance minister by all the Western media, by all the Western outlets, he would have some kind of more decisive approach when it comes to tackling this new development here. Mahathir during the financial crisis was pretty smart in manipulating the interest rates to make sure that people are still spending more. So, Anwar can still take a page out of Mahathir's book. He can still learn from his previous mentor in terms of how people would react. How can you find a way to mitigate certain uh, concerns so that people will continue spending, continue generating activity for the economy. So this is in a way, if it's time that Anwar can kind of show his experience as a finance minister in the 90s and a finance minister now. Is he still the same robust finance minister as he was touted out to be back then as he is now? So that's just how I'm being a bit more critical on this, considering how, like I said, Anwar said during the elections that the ringgit won't fall under fall when if he's in charge, but it has. So I have to be a bit more cynical and a bit more critical and call him that out for that.
I just want to be a devil advocate here because, yes, that's very true. He said that in the past, but again, I'm just going to use the another example to highlight this problem that statement that's saying, hey, PH in the past says such thing, and what happened now? Let's take, for example, the abolishment of PTPTN. So, for those who are not Malaysians out there, PTPTN is a education loan, a higher education loan, all right? So, PTPTN back then was stunted by Rafizi Ramli as a loan that is immoral, all right? Because people want to study, and why should we um, give them a loan on based on 1% interest? Now, and then he said, and he went on, once they become, if they become government at the time, I think this is pre 2018, and then that's 2000, starting 2013, something like that. So this is Avdi Adi around 10 years ago, okay? So Rafizi said, if they become government back then, they will abolish PTPTN loan that I think around 20 billion at that time. Now, when they become government, the same people shouting to Rafizi, hey, now that you're government, are you actually going to do abolish PTPTN loan? And of course, in today's, after 10 years, this is not possible due to the loan is not stagnant. It becomes bigger to be managed, and of course, bigger to be paid off compared to whatever amount. If it's 20 billion 10 years ago, can you imagine the amount now? So I think this is the same scenario with when the opposition uh, criticized the government of the day last time for similar reason, ringgit not performing very well, is because of the situation back then, and Malaysia as how competitive we are as a nation was on different level. I think if you're in the 90s or even as late as early 2000, no one in their right mind would say like, hey, Malaysia wouldn't be able to achieve this or that, to do this or to do that, because at that time we are at like our peak. We hosted Commonwealth Game. There was Twin Towers in just rose in in the center of Kuala Lumpur. What's not to like for Malaysia's economy? But again, because of complexity, because of politics, that BN started having more than two-third majority. Since 2000, we don't become more competitive as compared to our neighbors. Maybe not immediate neighbors, maybe neighbors like Taiwan or even Vietnam. So these are the underlying factors also that we need to look into when we talk about how Malaysia is today and how Malaysia was it 20 years ago. So just just gonna bear in mind these kind of things are dynamics and not static. And yeah, I mean, as politicians, they of course, who's what kind of politician doesn't want to ride on sentiment like that, right? So they, of course, I'm not defending them for saying that in the past, but I'm just trying to be, be in their shoes, that hey, it was different situation last time and today it was different, and yes, today is different because fundamentals are different.
Yeah, I think also just to add on that is that um, when you look at how Malaysia sort of came out of the financial crisis compared to the neighboring countries such as Thailand or Indonesia, uh, at first they did not come out of it as dynamically as Malaysia did. Now, Mahathir was able to try use how do you say capital control to make sure that it stabilizes the economic situation in Malaysia stabilizes. Whereas he had an argument with Anwar, who was trying to move towards receiving or actually asking for aid through the IMF and the World Bank, which is what I believe Indonesia and Thailand did. At first, Indonesia and Thailand, they did not have the best starting moving into the 2000s, but through over time, they were able to maximize that kind of potential through that kind tapping into the IMF and the World Bank. But South Malaysia, in a way, was kind of locked into a sort of a maximum potential, but it was never able to break through it in the last 2 decades. Uh, but who knows? I think moving forward, because this is quite a big development, and considering that Anwar has made huge claims with the whole Madani economy, Madani framework, we need to see something more decisive. We need to see something that is big, a big idea of where he wants to take the economy forward. So, if he wants to recall back to what methods he argued back then in the financial crisis, it would be logical to see him trying to receive more aid from Western global institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank once again. However, these are things that I see only can actually materialize as something substantive for our economy when you look at it 10 years down the line. When we borrow money from the IMF or the World Bank, it means that we are committed to a 10-year strategy in terms of economic development. Can Anwar actually plan out for those next 10 years? Now, if you are able to provide that to the people, it gives us some kind of roadmap, it gives us some kind of vision, and that this prime minister is not being a reactive prime minister, but one that is actively trying to shape the economy into something that is competitive, something that's able to go toe to toe with our neighbors, considering how we've had this narrative that Malaysia has been stagnating compared to the Philippines, to Thailand, now to Indonesia. We need to have a new edge, something new, some newer prospects. I don't think there has been any ambitious goals from our leaders since Dr. Sri Najib, who, given all his faults, did have his own particular brand of economic policies and fiscal policies that can actually tap into foreign investments and all kinds of ambitious projects that does generate something for the economy. So I would like to see that for Anwar in relation to this new development of the ringgit. I want to see something a bit more um, bold and more daring. But I think considering that just from the time of this episode coming out, within the same week, he's going to be hosting the Congress Economy Bumiputra, which is he's going to be his first one as prime minister. And these are usually huge affairs, a huge event where we set the tone. Malaysia does set the tone of where does the Bumiputra economy going to move in the next 10 to 20 years. So maybe he could be unveiling something new, something more daring there. Because also, I think what we need to consider here, what's interesting, is that this is the first time Economic Bumiputra Congress is going to include non-Bumiputras. They're going to have speakers and panelists and policymakers that are non-Bumiputra category to actually participate in developing the Bumiputra economy. So it would be interesting to see what would come out of that, because the first ever Congress in 68, no 65, then later 68, did bring about Majelis Amanah Rakyat, which is now we call MARA, and all kinds of welfare and support programs for Bumi Putras to elevate them, to make them more competitive. Maybe we could see that in this Congress, but anything could happen, really.
Yeah, definitely, and I do agree with you that Madadi government should be more robust in terms of their approach to a new economic outlook. But I also giving some cut some slack for the government Madani, so that 2023 is a housekeeping time for them to clear out what, because you cannot build on top of something not solid, right? So 2023, I'm gonna give them for a solid foundation. I mean, Padu was launched the other day. I really like what they did, and then yeah, I think 2024 is going to be a year where we can see a lot of announcement, more aggressive on top of what they already announced in 2023. So I think that's for ringgit depreciations issue that we cover this week. And up next, we're gonna go far away in Europe. So we're gonna talk about an issue in Europe, and Adi will lead on that episode. See you on the next episode.